Hey all, it's your girl Erin, and today I wanted to actually continue talking about socialism, and I wanted to talk about or respond to one of the main criticisms I've been getting about some of the stuff I've been saying. And so, one of the main criticisms people have is that they don't see this type of thing working in like big corporations, like mega corporations, or at a global scale the way capitalism works. And I do want to respond to that, but before I get into that answer particularly, I wanted to talk about the psychology around the modes of production. And because I think that the psychology is part of the reason why people are not actually willing to try it, or potentially why they can't see such a system working. So I'm not sure if you're aware of something called neuroplasticity, but that is a word that refers to our brain's ability to change itself, our brain's ability to adapt to your environment, your surroundings, the things that happen. And it also adapts to the things you think, feel, and experience. And so basically anything that is input information, anything that is like stimulus to your brain, will have the ability, your brain has the ability to adapt and change around that. So, wow, there's some kind of bee here. So one of the areas that people have commented about this phenomenon happening is when it comes to how say television and social media has reduced our attention span. Like, it hasn't really reduced our attention span in my opinion, but what it has done is it's increased our level of information processing. So we get used to processing a lot more information, and then something that has a lack of information, something that is very low information, that, you know, that's going to be boring, it's going to be uninteresting, and you'll want to, and also potentially once you feel like you've gained all the information from a certain topic or something, then you're more likely to move on to another to keep that input of information coming, because we've gotten used to it. But that is kind of a vague analogy. Maybe one that you might experience every day would be how, let's say you're someone who didn't enjoy drinking or eating a specific thing, maybe coffee, beer, vegetables, or whatever it is, but after you tried it many times, and each time you tried it, it was a little bit less like offensive to you, and then after a while you might have even grown to like it. So that's what happened with me with stuff like coffee and even spicy food. When I started trying to eat spicy food, I couldn't even handle sweet chili, and like pepper on its own was like super burny for me. But what I did was I just kept, I kept eating it and I kept eating it, and then I got used to that. And part of it is maybe there is like physical changes, but not really, because like I can go months and months without having anything spicy, and then when I do eat something spicy, you know, I can still handle like a lot more than just sweet chili. So something about my brain has changed, that it's reduced how sensitive it is to that, basically. And your brain optimizes, and so like with coffee, your brain will like de-emphasize the bitterness over time. It gets used to it, and you get used to the bitterness and you start to taste the other flavors. And that is also neuroplasticity. And so basically everything we do is changing our minds all the time, and everything we think as well. So someone who continuously thinks negative thoughts about themselves, when someone else gives them a compliment, the very first thing their brain will do is it'll think of something negative to negate the compliment, because their brain has configured itself to view you as negative, and then the positive comment is something that is attacking your analysis or your conclusions or whatever. And so you need a contrary information. And so if you've been trained or brainwashed or whatever into being negative, and but you can also come out of that. You can also train yourself and continually think positive things about yourself, and surround yourself with people who are going to be kind to you, and that's going to change your brain. You're going to stop thinking negative things first, and that's also neuroplasticity. So there's a lot of areas in our lives that neuroplasticity affects, actually, and if you ask me, it is actually probably the most important concept to modern day philosophy, and I believe that many of the authors who have the hottest takes, they were intuiting this, the way the brain works like this, before the science actually proved it, because the science really only confirmed it in like the 1970s. But many psychologists, many philosophers intuited this, the way people are. People like people like Max Stirner, and the whole sort of post-left, the names that come to mind are names like Foucault and stuff like that, but there's other people who talk about that more in better words because they did their research and stuff. But my point is that just because we only now have the understanding of neuroplasticity in terms of the physical and scientific language, we have had philosophically harmonious theories to neuroplasticity in the past. But that is also a side topic. But let's get on to capitalism and socialism now. So think of how everything in your life gets sort of tainted by capitalism. Like anytime you see something you like in the shops, your brain is like, I wonder how much it costs, or I wonder if I could afford it. Every time you get your paycheck or whatever, you're like, wow, you get in like a super good mood, because now you don't have to worry about running out of money and stuff. And and then even when it comes to things like acts of kindness to others, there's like this, I owe you back type of thing. And so the way we do capitalism, the fact that to get our needs met we have to engage in production for exchange, the fact that we have to go and sell our labor, take what we get for that and buy our necessities, doing that over and over again, like literally almost every day of your life, is also doing the same thing to your brain as neuroplasticity, as repeating, etc. And so what it does is your brain adapts to capitalism. You get really good at living and navigating capitalism, and you begin to and then a lot, like sometimes with you know how you can get sort of like a muscle memory. That's basically when you've done something enough times that your brain can like automate that process. And that also happens via neuroplasticity. That automation is your brain making the pathways stronger and etc. like that. So, but yeah. But the point is that we get used to capitalism and we react to each other and we function in society, and everything we do is coming out of our brains being submerged and soaked in capitalism, and it changes the way we think. And that's why I think, to begin with, why it's difficult for people to imagine a society of no exchange, a society where you give someone, what you have made for free and rely on someone else having the same good faith for when you need something without having any money or IOU or barter or voucher or anything to guarantee that your need will be met in the future, other than the fact that that is how everyone is doing everything. So you can only trust really for it to be in place with a stranger if you know, if that is the default of your society, if doing things without the exchange was our normal, because then that would be what's training our brains. Then we wouldn't be thinking, I wonder if I can afford it. We'd be thinking like, do I need it, or do anyone I know need it, or how can I help this person to make more of that, or whatever. Those will be your automatic reactions, or you might just appreciate it for its beauty and stuff, and not even have that drive to obtain as much, because if you think of like internet, right, if you have a capped internet and you have certain amounts of gigabytes per month, or versus an uncapped, you might have capped at say 50 gigs a month, and you normally only use say 30 gigs a month. And so in your normal everyday life, you might never run out of cap. But if a new game comes out and the game is like 40 gigabytes or whatever, then you literally will not be able to download it, and you might need to like get a friend to download it or span it over multiple months or whatever. And so even though in your typical behavior you might never come across something that would break your cap, there is still certain circumstances, circumnuations, it's a new word, where that type of cap does restrain you, and that impacts the way you browse. That has an effect on you. You do kind of censor. If you could download something frivolously, you wouldn't. You wouldn't download a 20 gigabyte game just to see how good it is. You would first want to know from other people, like, is it worth a download, etc., because you got this cap to burn. Now, if you had uncapped, you wouldn't even think about it. You would just be like, oh, cool, I can download it. So that is a way where, your paradigm shifts a bit. And, so that's kind of what we're talking about when it comes to saying that the way we think will change when it comes to capitalism and participating in an economy that doesn't have exchange. And so, so that was the first point, is that we often are unable to imagine it because our brains have been trained to operate in a completely different way. The second reason why I think we can't imagine it is because it isn't being talked about a lot, and there isn't very much media that depicts this kind of society. People often say to this kind of idea, it's too utopian, and so they'll either have some serious flaw when they depict it that makes it into a dystopia, or they'll just won't even try and depict it at all, or it'll be depicted as like some fantasy that people can't really do. There isn't a lot of media that is challenging that and saying like, look, we can practically achieve it. Here are people doing it, and so I think that in that sense, things like the genre solar punk or hope punk are really needed in society, because we have to actually be able to imagine such a society existing. But another way that we can imagine it is if we actually see it. And so that's why I'm saying one of the ways we can tackle this as well is for whoever has access to means of production to begin doing this themselves, to put that means of production to use, producing for use instead of exchange. So they form a union, because you can't do it with strangers. It has to be trusted people at first, which, as I've explained previously, you form a union of people that want to do this, and you start doing that, even if it's just your hobbies, and you get such an economy going. It doesn't have to be self-sufficient at first. It will gain self-sufficiency at scale, but you have to start somewhere. And so you start with it not being self-sufficient, with people having to do it in their free time or use some of their spare money and invest in it and get it going. But once you have an economy where this is how people operate, where everyone within the economy is giving their services and products for free, and everyone else can access it for free. Then you will start to have a model, a prototype that people can look at and say, oh, okay, so it does actually work, or oh, so that's how it happens. And that's another way that will help people to imagine it happening. And then I also wanted to add some more on to how we solve the more difficult problems. And so the first thing I wanted to do in that regard, and this is the last section of the things I wanted to say, for those worried about it being a super long video. So you have, let's first talk about sports teams, right? You might have, let's say, team red and team blue, and then team red and blue have a rivalry going back whatever, they always play and it's always a good game, and they develop fans. The fans come and watch them, and those fans, when they are not even watching, when they are at the pub after, when they're talking to their friends later, they might identify themselves as being on team blue or on team red, but they don't actually play in the game. They're just offering like support and all that. Or so I would say that those people are participating via spectatorship. And the same is true when it comes to capitalism, right? You get a few people who have control of capital, and they can use their money to start a business or buy land or follow whatever pursuit they have. They could buy ads to get out more of the type of content they want. There's a lot that you can do with capital, and the people who have a lot of capital and are using it to do various things, those are people that we normally call the capitalists or the capitalist class. And we don't normally call the workers capitalists. However, workers may call themselves capitalists in the sports team sense of it, where they are ideologically aligned with capitalism despite not having access to a bunch of capital themselves. But now, the people who are that, who are spectators only in capitalism, despite they might claim to be on team capitalism and they might claim to be capitalists, they don't have real world experience of being a capitalist. They haven't tested out how to make a profit. They haven't tried selling a service or product and tried to keep that business going or whatever. They haven't got real world experience of using capital and being a capitalist expert in that sense of putting capital to work. Now, when we talk about socialism, you have the exact same effect, where there would potentially be experts at socialism who are doing a socialism with a lot of social, and then there might be people who are spectating. But now the problem is, right now, everybody on the team social is a spectator pretty much. Nobody is putting this stuff into practice yet, and so you don't really have experts. You have people who are experts in theory, who have thought about it a whole lot, who, you know, have tried putting some form of it into practice, but you don't have people with massive amounts of productive capacity going towards production for use and social needs yet. And so what that would look like would be, let's say in your community you start one of these unions and you start producing stuff, and you get people who are farming, you get people who are doing all the things, and your community actually manages to become kind of self-sufficient. Maybe you still need to buy high-end manufactured goods, and maybe you still need to sell some of your stuff to cover that, but most of your basic needs are being met by people in the community. And now let's say there's a whole bit of extra production. Maybe after working 4 hours a day, you've done all the work you need to cover your community's needs, and you've got some extra time. Now, with all of that extra productive capacity, you could team together and do stuff with it. You could be like, hey, why don't we build a community center? Hey, why don't we build a new factory to do XYZ? And use that surplus capacity you have to start doing that. And when people start doing that, that is when I think they are starting to be experts at socialism, and actually, in the truest sense of the word, socialists. Not just spectators, but people on the field playing the socialist game. People doing it for real, not just theorizing about it. And so, until we have a whole lot of people doing it on the small scale for it to get bigger, we're never going to get to a stage of having excess capacity, and we're never going to get to a stage of having a lot of extra productive capacity to put to practice. And so we have to start somewhere. We have to start with it small, and only once it's grown do you get to a scale comparable to what happens under capitalism. So who knows how long it'll take? Maybe it'll take 50 years for you to go from you and your friends to something big enough to build a big building or whatever. But the thing is, that's how capitalism got there anyway. Capitalism had to start with a small amount of people doing stuff, and then, it built towards where it is. And so we already have the knowledge and access to all the resources now. That bit of the hard work's done. What we don't have is ability to engage, to direct the resources and labor of people to make these things for social need. We don't. So we have the technical know-how, the technical ability, the people who know how to do all this stuff, but all of it is being gate-kept behind capital. So only people have to get paid, or you have to buy to get access to the stuff, rather than it being made available free. So yeah, we need to get there, and we will get there eventually, I think, but we got to start somewhere. So and the thing is, like, now you can take a capitalist organization that is running for profits, and let's say it became a worker cooperative. They could plan and move away from capital and move towards this type of social economic model. And so it doesn't have to necessarily be people using their hobbies. It can be stuff like seizing other means of production. I just talk about doing it as a hobby, as a way to point out that there isn't anything stopping us, because people often say, like, we need to first capture the states, or we need to first get the states to be on board with all of this before we can do it. And the thing is, the state's never going to be on board with all of this, because the states wouldn't exist if we had all of this. Like, if you had a union like that, why would you need a state? And we can go into how to solve everything the state does through this kind of economic model in future videos, but we can, and I believe we can. I know we can. We can achieve anything without the state that the state can give us. So the reason why the states exist is to be the middleman that can say, hey, this person is a capitalist and they get to keep their property that they paid with capital. If you have a union of people working in cooperation and solving problems together, you don't need that. You can just be like, hey, you don't need 1 million kilograms of uranium. Let's make a bunch of nuclear power, whatever. Anyway, I'm kind of getting rambly a bit maybe, and video's getting a bit long, so I think I'm going to end it off here. But yeah, basically, if I wanted to summarize all my points I've made, it's that there are various reasons why people can't imagine it. They need to see a working model first, they need to see it in media to imagine it, or they need to be exposed to and really understand what it is. And then people need to get there, people need to start putting it into practice. And that we will get to a scale equivalent to megacorps and all that eventually, but you're not going to get there immediately because of stuff like there being police and armies and all that who will literally stop you from seizing the big corps means of production. But a union and a socialist economy servicing that union, that's better for you if you were to be part of it than any alternative for you. So in that sense, even if we start small and do it at a hobby level, it's still a quality of life upgrade for people who participate in it. And so it shouldn't need to wait. We can do it right now because it benefits us right now, and it will start growing. And who knows, maybe organically from the bottom up grassroots movement like this, we will actually achieve such a big economy that we can do stuff like manufacture microchips and batteries and all that kind of stuff, and we can have our union members with our own made stuff and not have to go to the capitalist market for it. And when we can solve that, when we get to that scale, when we have the resources and knowledge and all that in the socialist economy to do all that, capitalism is irrelevant and obsolete, and people will start switching just because they no longer want to deal with money inequality and all the weird instability that comes with a capital-based economy rather than a cooperative and mutually planned one. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hope that helped, and I'll catch you around. Bye.